You are listening to The Only Constant, a podcast where we go beyond the usual discussions in technology and business and aim to explore more than explain. Join me for engaging discussions with a diverse range of global thought leaders as we seek to uncover new perspectives and insights in a free-flowing conversation. My guest today is Tom Allen, and I am your host, Les Arinda. Hi, Tom, and welcome to The Only Constant. I'm really happy to have you on the show today, and just really looking forward to continuing our chats that we've had over the months and years.
Yeah, man, it's exciting to be on with you, Lassie. I'm really excited, and thank you for having me. It's been following a few of them you've been doing, and when you reached out about it, I was like, yeah, it's awesome. And we always have some interesting chats when we've been chatting via message and in the build up before you started this. So it's always fun to talk to you, man.
Yeah, likewise, and like we can't even stop chatting when we're chatting. So let's see if we can how it ends up today. But obviously, it's also about sometimes we just go. I think just before we started recording, we were discussing mobile apps or mobile games, right? So it's
Yeah, I love them.
everything and everywhere all at once, right? Yeah.
Mm.
But Tom, you founded the AI Journal before the Gen AI craze. I just, how did the launch of ChatGPT affect your life? Having that journal already there, you must have had quite a boom. Selling shovels in a gold rush is never a bad idea, is it?
Yeah, exactly, man. It was really different, I guess. Everything that just happened with generative AI and with ChatGPT in particular, it didn't necessarily affect us too much because I think people were at the start. And if anything, find it's getting talked about more now,
Mm,
like more in depth and more high quality conversations around it and more areas. But still, I mentioned it in the newsletter, how people are still telling us how they're all in on AI and AI is going to change it and this and that and that, and you still struggle, or at least I do, to really find proper use cases or examples where what teams are actually doing. But for us, it really opened my eyes more recently rather than like a year ago, because a year ago everyone was talking about it and a lot of people were just asking me, "Oh, Tom, you're in AI," and I was like, "I'm not actually in AI. I'm not a software developer, or I'm not a head of
mm,
product, or I'm not a data analyst or a data scientist, or people that would put models into production or whatever." So really, I was trying to understand it from a macro kind of level, from what the kind of impact could be. And I mean, I still see the same benefits that I saw back then. But I mean, I always found it a bit bizarre because like when you look at uh, Mark Benioff in particular, he stands out to me from Salesforce with Einstein. I think Einstein, if I've got my history correct, was he tried to start it in like 2017, and that was using aspects of what Open AI essentially is. Although I don't think the technology was there, and he talks about it in his book, so I don't want to misquote it or misread it. But I know he was mentioning how Einstein and generative AI capabilities, he was trying to launch that, I think, around end of 2016, 2017. And the models and things that happened, and obviously the lawsuit that's now popped up between Elon and
mm.
OpenAI and him leaving in 2018, it shows it was all there before. But I guess I mean, my timing was perfect. And people ask me, I'm like, yeah, I got really good timing with AI channel. Like, no doubt about it. But ChatGPT, I guess, generative AI has been, I'd say it's more developing now, and we're really starting to see exciting things happen rather than a year ago. But yeah, it definitely impacted us in terms of traffic and people asking questions and wanting to do things. But I think now, past 3 to 6 months, depending what industry you look at, is where people have properly started getting materials around it or kind of go to market strategies, and some are still, I'd say, a year away from what I hear about, and are kind of noticing. Like, we spoke to one company the other day and they were noticing, or last week, and they were noticing, hey, these things we're trying to build around it aren't necessarily our sweet spot, and we're still getting a lot more traction in where I don't know if the word traditionally placed is, but what we're stronger at and what our bigger business. So I think it's people are going to find out it's not necessarily going to enhance every business, or it's not going to be like I don't know the right way of saying it, Lassie, like a product offering of every business. I guess everyone's looking at it as like, how can we offer it or how can we implement it?
Mm.
And I think some are going to be several years away. I mean, there's some things that it's like you just can't replace. Like, it's a very hard thing to replace. And I'm not saying it won't take role, but it's very hard to impact. Like if you look at finance, insurance, which are usually very quick early adopters for technology, compared to something like healthcare, because you've got to go through regulations, or something like
Mm.
travel, where it's very a personal connection. They're always going to take a bit longer. You might find aspects, but yeah, it's kind of yeah.
So you're saying that there's a. I heard you in the beginning saying that it affected you because of more traffic, right? But it
Mm.
also affected you in a way where it made everything a little bit more blurry, maybe than it was before. So what were you actually talking about?
Yeah,
Pre-ChatGPT was actually concrete
exactly that.
stuff, and then suddenly it became this weird hype. Let's should we just all go and prompt it and have fun and making I don't know King James Bible quotes out of some recipes or.
Yeah, I felt very similar to what you're just saying. Actually, it's like did you see? You must have seen it. Like some of the things that I was seeing, I just couldn't understand what they were saying. Like I still don't. Like Jamie Dimon recently, and even someone as big as Tim Cook saying they're all in on AI. I can't remember the exact quote, but he said we're going to be making big moves on AI this year, which I'm sure they will. But like Jamie Dimon said at a conference the other week, like trust me, AI is real. I was like, well, the only way I'm going to trust you is if you actually give me a bloody use case. Like, I need to see what you're doing to trust you. It's very hard not to. I don't know if you see that, but there was just so much stuff. I thought, are people forgetting about the other amazing technologies and capabilities that are out there? Like, this is still in a. To me, I just thought, I can't take this seriously, I guess. Or
I
how.
spoke to someone, a couple of weeks ago, who said that he was being asked to sort of look at all these use cases. He was
Mm,
from a public sector consultant came to him and asked him, "How can we make all this with new technology?" And then they've already prepared, a prep list, and all of the issues there were just saying, "Okay, we can solve this with generative AI, generative AI, generative AI," and it's just only generative AI. And
mm,
he's like, but there's a concert of technologies out there that can solve issues, right? We
yeah,
shouldn't just look at this one technology to do everything. And by the way, most of the things it does really good, like RAG, it actually uses other technologies as well to do that. So
yeah,
this is
exactly.
this. It has to be AI with AI on it. Like it has. I think there's been a lot of greenfield implementation hype as well, right?
Mm,
I think that's actually the biggest crime of this hype era is that everyone's been like, no, just pretend you have nothing in place already. You have no processes, no systems, and let's rebuild it all with AI.
yeah,
That it
exactly.
feels.
It's like
So it feels a little bit like that. It's like, what is this?
yeah, it's such a weird. I don't know. I mean, it is very hyped up at times, but it's very powerful. But I just think, similar to your point, Lassie, and I'm sure you've seen examples probably similar to the ones that I've got in the top of my head, where I think, do you even know what you're on about? Like, and I'm open
Hmm.
about it. I'm sometimes like, I do not understand how this works or what it looks at, especially when people talk to me about more technical things. But I mean, yeah, we'll carry on selling shovels in this gold rush, no problem. Like it's something that I don't see moving away. But I just wish people, because look, you've got to think about it. This is a big point, actually, Lasse, and I'd love to know what you think on it. We get a lot of enterprises come to us or come to me and say, which vendor should I trust, and which one is hype, and which one are actually building things, and what are actually putting models into production. And I'd say that's probably one of the biggest challenges right now, because it's how do you see what people are actually building? And I think a lot of other technologies like cloud and the powers of what that can do are just getting sidetracked by generative AI and by
Hmm.
ChatGPT. And I just think, yeah, it's
Well, but it's an interesting question actually because I've been saying over the last couple of weeks and months. I also said that on the podcast with Alexander Leonida
mm,
that we don't really know how operations is going to look with AI or generative AI. We don't have anything scaled yet. There's
mm,
no banks or insurance companies to imitate like there was with RPA.
mm,
So we don't know what could hit us with in operation terms, right?
mm,
It's all about figuring it out as we go, and the whole world is figuring it out as we go, right? That's
such a good point.
and that also means that what models should we be looking at? What vendors? I think there's right now. I know there's some marketing noise coming out of OpenAI all the time with. Oh, we have this. I can never remember, but the Q project or whatever they called it, right?
Yeah,
And we have some emerging capabilities, something we didn't know, and but no one's ever seen it. No
yeah,
one's ever seen either of
exactly,
those two, right? It's just like
exactly.
so you're saying things, but the truth is, dear OpenAI, you haven't released at GPT-5, and it's been almost a year since has been a year now, right? Since GPT-4.
Yeah, roughly a year. It was around this time, and
Yeah,
I
yeah, and then the rest of the market is just playing catch up to GPT-4 and is succeeding with it. And basically, the only cutting edge OpenAI has is that they had more users immediately, so they have more RLHF, right, reinforcement learning from human feedback.
mm,
So, so I have this weird sense right now, and we're talking March 2024 when this podcast is being recorded,
yeah,
that the technology is slightly plateauing already, and that's gonna disappoint a lot of people if
yeah,
that's true. But there's this weird thing, we have the mixture of expert thing that is actually changing some things, making it faster and no better actually, and more consistent on its context.
mm,
But it's not making it bigger. It's not making it smarter. It's just, do you get my point? Do you get where I'm going at with this,
yeah,
Tom?
of course. And I think it's I mean that point there. It's funny how many experts have appeared in generative AI so quickly. I've never seen so bloody many. Like it's
No.
everyone's all of a sudden an expert in it. I think to your point, there's still such a long way ahead, and there's so many not long way ahead. There's just so many things that we don't understand about it, and I'm amazed that companies are jumping at it to say how much it's going to like. Of course, it's going to revolutionize your business and change the things, and I think that's part of my answer to the only constant. But it's yes, I guess that's probably the thing that annoyed me most: how quickly um, people or companies or people you look at for advice have just jumped at it to class themselves as experts in this field when it's a really evolving area and like you said maybe plateauing and you got to think who else is going to come onto the scene and we wrote about it and we looked at it from what Microsoft is doing with their new partnership and what XAI is doing with Grok and there's some really fascinating things where people are just yeah and I think being very careful not to get caught up in that hype is
But it's difficult, right? Because we're also trying not to get caught up in being, naysayers, or someone who's
yeah,
like, in Denmark we call it a machine stormer, as we call it in Denmark. People who destroy machines because we hate them, and that's not what we want to be. I'm
yeah,
definitely not that
exactly.
kind of person. But I'm also just skeptical. I think that there's still some. Every time we hear someone coming out with a new chatbot for customer service, we're just
Mm,
waiting for it to jailbreak, right?
yeah,
To
exactly.
fall flat on its back, right? Because and that's really sad, right? Everyone's just like, I remember seeing on LinkedIn someone saying after the Klarna made a new chatbot that's going to replace 700 FTEs, they were like, "Oh, I'm just waiting to see how this unfolds." A popcorn emoji,
Mm,
right? Just can't wait till it fails. Oh, this is going to be fun, you
yeah,
know, because we expect it to, and it will fail. That's how it works, right? There is so many hallucinations in it. I think that the whole chatbot thing, because it's an obvious chatbot, but I think the chatbot thing is perhaps the wrong place to start. I think we need to not make a new framework for AI, but actually embed it into the frameworks we already have. I think that's where the goal is.
yeah. How do you see it then, Lassie? How do you see it? I don't know. How do you see it changing over like the next year from what we're seeing now and what's happening with it at the moment?
Well, the technology, I'm a little bit afraid of predicting anything on the technology side, but I see a lot of people turning away from chatbots actually and turning it into more automation and automation on unstructured, because
Yeah,
that's where you have tangible, proximate value, right? It works right now. That's an objective. You can embed it directly into that.
yeah,
I also said earlier that is really good that we've had this whole automation era with RPA and
uh,
workflows and everything, because that taught us some things about how to sort of box in tasks and build tasks like that.
yeah,
And I think that's very useful for AI when you use AI as a service, right?
mm,
I think the chatbot thing is, the hallucination is a feature. It's not a bug. And if it doesn't have
real.
the relevant context, no matter how big your context window is, if it doesn't have what it's looking for in its context, or for some weird reason it can't retrieve its own context, some of the
Mm,
models can't do that very well, it will hallucinate.
yeah,
That's just the way it works.
it's the way
And you can't give it a context of the entire world.
yeah,
That's against the purpose of it, right? So we need to find out a way to do this on places where we don't have anything right now. I usually say turn on light in a dark room.
yeah,
Now you're
exactly.
asking me questions, Tom.
I'm just interested. I'm always asking people questions because it's very true. Your point though, it annoys me how people. I mean, it's like if you turn on the news, like you're bound to see bad news because bad news sells. And I just think, God, like. bugger off. Like, sometimes things just need to learn, or things need to happen,
Mm.
or you need to make mistakes. And I don't think they're very costly mistakes at the moment, but it's like we almost don't. Well, I mean, it's very easily you can see the picture that we don't want to innovate. Like some of the headlines I read, and it's just like, well, what is this? Like, of course, it's going to make mistakes, and of course, we need to be creating better technology and whatever sector you're applying these things to. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting next year. I feel like the next year is going to be a big one for actually seeing implementation over maybe the next 18 months or so. But I could be wrong about
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if what no, but just what if in a year we still don't have these scaled use cases?
that. I don't
That
think
would
we will.
be,
Yeah, I don't think we will.
that would be a bubble burst, right?
Yeah, I really don't think we will. Like you look at the internet. Like the internet was massive and it still is, but it took a while. It wasn't until really
Yeah.
it was like when social media companies came around. That's I think I was hearing how that was what caused a big spike in internet. Obviously, before it was happening, but when those social around 2007, 2008, that's when you look at the usage and the amount that things happened, and obviously it also was
Yeah,
quite
but that's
tied
what
with the
Stephen
iPhone.
Pemberton said.
Yeah, it's
That's
weird.
what Stephen Pemberton said on my podcast as well. He said that, and he was, one internet pioneer. He was the first man in Europe
Mm,
to ever go on the internet. So
yeah,
that's so he built the HTML and code and all those stuff, right? But he said that that people need to die before we can understand what this is, right? So not get killed, but die. But you
yeah,
see, the old generation has to die before we understand how we can use it in different ways. So the first
mm,
ways you used, I used the example with the radio, right? No, with the TV. The first TV shows were just, televised radio. People just
mm,
sitting there reading from paper, blah 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 blah, and no one really liked that until someone came up and, hey, maybe we can do this differently. When the old
yeah,
guard sort of left, someone said, let's do this in a different way, and then you had TV shows and all those things, right?
yeah.
And the same with social media. So, but maybe we need to get to that stage as well with AI. I think
Well,
with
eventually,
generative AI, to be precise, right? So, because we've had AI, the so me thing is also an AI thing, right? Just to be
mm,
very precise, very
yeah.
much AI, right? In social media, just a different kind of AI, right?
Yeah, but it's interesting, Lassie, because it's when you think about those kind of things, how sometimes, um, I don't know, you wonder why everyone wants this to be so successful so quickly. Like you almost wonder what, like I don't know the answer, and I'm sure different people would have different answers, whether they want to jump to the same buzzwords as improved efficiency and all that rubbish, which I don't really ever like. I understand it, but I don't really see it as encapsulating me or whatever. And I'm
Mm.
talking purely from media side and purely from what we see. But there's all sorts of fascinating technology. I think it was like the first video call was made possible, and fact check me on it. I think it was 1984 or something, where the first like kind of video call was made possible. And it obviously wasn't until Skype came around that it got popular and like the internet
Mm.
came around. Like you could see it on a like the way that it was presenting itself. I can't remember exactly how, but I remember seeing that story. And like yesterday, because I'm watching Shogun on Disney and it's awesome. I say it's so good.
Oh, cool.
And it got me thinking about what kind of technology they pioneered. And obviously, the bullet train was one in like 1964 off the Tokyo Olympics, and that was like the first train to reach speeds of 130 miles
Going to
per hour.
Japan in the summer, actually. I'm going to Japan in the summer, first time
Dude,
ever. So I'm looking forward to that.
man, where are you going? Whereabouts are you going?
Oh, but just going
All
around
over.
from Tokyo and down south, right? So
Yeah,
that's going to be really interesting. Not going the Hokkaido trip, but anyway, I'm looking very much forward to that.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
cool.
so funny you mentioned it.
Well, they're big people on tech, and they pioneered like the QR code, which was around for
Mm.
ages, and then obviously that got a massive uptake during the pandemic because of hospitality and all these other things. So I think it's always interesting, like you said, and like your the gentleman you had on the show, it will it takes years for some things to pull off. Like you look at electric cars and all sort. There's GPS. GPS was invented in by Japanese again in like 1996 or something. I put the date in the newsletter yesterday, but all these technologies that are there, but sometimes just take years and years and years to find the right slot or the right spot or the right
Yeah,
platform to develop. And maybe we haven't got the right platforms yet. Maybe generative AI is not meant for the internet. Maybe it's meant for VR and vision glasses and all the things that it's or smart rings. I don't know. Maybe that's what it's meant for. Oh.
maybe it's meant to just be something we can converse with, and then maybe give us something on some unstructured data we can't work with. So something then I can have a chat about different things with it, and then I can see if I like it. maybe it's not supposed to be autonomous. That's the point. I think the autonomous thing is an
Mm.
overstretch for an hallucinating machine, or as Kurt Cagle called it 2 weeks ago, a lying machine. He was really fascinated by that. He
Yeah,
made it sound really
cool.
beautiful. It is beautiful. We've made a machine that lies, he said.
Yeah,
Now
that is.
that is a mind stretch, out of the ordinary. It made me really like, oh yeah, that is actually beautiful. It made me think also right now, maybe we should look at it in a museum, just be like, whoa, it
Yeah.
lies. And not saying, how can I put this lying machine into my ERP? I need to get it to talk to
Yeah.
my customers right now. Maybe that, but but you get my point, right? So there's something beautiful about it, and you're absolutely right. Maybe we'll see how we're going to use that to the fullest in
10,
not
15, 20
not next year, but in 10 years, 15
years.
years maybe.
Wow.
Because there's also this other thing. I went to on museums. I went to Louisiana Museum of Modern Art yesterday, which
Nice.
is one of Denmark's finest art museums north of Copenhagen. And they obviously, I don't know, obviously, but they have an exhibition right now about AI
Mm.
and or what it does to machines, and it's actually called the irreplaceable machine human. It's called.
Yeah.
And then the point is obviously to show all these ways that humans are becoming replaceable
Place.
parts, right? And you have, yeah, yeah. So that's the point of it's to sort of problematize that thing that humans are replaceable.
Yeah.
But one of the key ideas when they wrote the why they did the exhibition in the beginning, so description of it, was that humans demand more and more to produce things without being frail or show emotions and stuff like that. So we are supposed to be more and more like a predictable machine. We want more and more predictability,
Mm.
they said. And that's why we will end up becoming machines. Our machines will take us over. And
Yeah.
this made me think, yeah, but that's not ChatGPT. It's
Yeah.
not a predictable machine.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I don't know. Luciana, you need to try out ChatGPT and see if you can make it reliable. If you can do that, I'll be very happy. I think it was Kurt on another podcast, Kurt Cagle, who said that in Frozen, you have this a song where Anna sings with this evil boyfriend. If you've seen the cartoon Frozen, and then he says, "We finish each other's," and then she sings sandwiches instead of your sentences, which is the probable thing. But that could also happen in in a stochastic model like a generative AI model, that it will
Yeah.
say sentences most of the times, but then suddenly sandwiches, because it just activated that particular node or whatever,
Mm.
and then it said.
Or
So
different.
we're having these lying machines, right? We're not having predictable machines, and how do we even work with that?
Yeah. How do you work? That's quite a cool way of looking at it, though, because what else will it turn into? What kind of conversations will it turn into? Like lying's one thing, or will it? I don't know. That goes to the creativity part, because lying's being can be classed as being creative. Like if you've got to come up with a lie, or the situation that's fictional or whatever, it's yeah, it's pretty cool to play with that idea. What kind of ideas it will give us as people. Strange.
But you're also saying that from the AI journal, you mentioned many times you're not a data science, you're not a data analyst, you're not a developer, you don't have that background, right?
Mm,
But most people just say you just need to learn how to ask questions in a prompt, right? Then you can work with the new models, right? The new foundational AI models.
mm,
So I think that often the AI market is becoming extremely asymmetrical right now. That on one hand you have this quick access to these foundational models, and the other
mm,
you have these custom trained solutions that cost you millions of dollars, right?
mm.
But how do you navigate that in the AI journal, and how do you make sure you capture the right attention points, capture the models that actually change things for people? Because you have to talk about generative AI. That's what everyone wants to talk about, but you also have to talk about um, what should we call it? Classical AI or the other AI, machine
Yeah,
learning
the
AI,
other AI.
whatever. I don't know. The other AI. Oh, the old
Traditional.
boring one. Oh,
Yeah.
that's the boring sister. Oh, no.
Yeah, the boring one that doesn't get as much light or as much attention. As
Yeah.
maybe we'll put that as a category on the website, like boring AI. Or, yeah, I don't know. I'll give you
Boring AI.
I'll give you credit for it.
No, please don't.
I'm joking. I'm joking, dude. But yeah, man, it's a really important point, because I mean I always stick to the thing that we don't really, in a harsh way. Maybe it'll be a down. I don't know what the right word is. Maybe it'll be a limitation of our platform. But we kind of just talk around what we see as helpful at the time, and it might not always be around generative AI. I mean, I personally love covering things like the cloud and quantum computing. I think it's going to be very exciting, and there's areas within or just day to day actions and knowing it. Like you can have all the tech in the world, if you haven't got a good product that people don't want, no one's going to buy your product, and you're not going to have sales. You're not going to have a business. Like it's rare you can. It's getting. I don't know how rare, but I'd say there's a lot more companies that actually sell products that are maybe unsexy, that are needed and generate a lot of revenue and generate a lot of jobs or whatever, compared to companies that are purely hyped up because of one day it might be able to deliver. They exist and they get funded sometimes, and funded quite heavily sometimes. But I think um, there's a lot of things that people miss, I guess, and there's a lot of models that work perfectly great that need to be explored or fine tuned or looked at, or what's relevant to a certain industry. And I don't know. I've always just really tried to steer. Because look, I came into it from a job thinking the reason I needed to create the platform is because everywhere I looked wasn't giving me an in-depth enough view. I'd have to go to quite technical platforms, and there was no middle ground between. I think that's
Hmm.
changed a little bit now. I haven't probably done enough research like I was back then before I built the platform, bought the domain or whatever. But it is a really tricky way to look at it, Lassie, because I kind of think what will help people most at the moment, and what helps, and we always try to look at it from the enterprise point of view. What's going to help the businesses that need to implement what vendors offer, because every vendor is going to say that they're the best vendor, or it seems to be a very common theme. I wouldn't say everyone because I haven't asked everyone, but it seems to be a common theme. And it's really
But just
out.
to know, I am the best vendor. We are the best vendor, by the way. So
Exactly,
just
and
already said it.
like I'm the best media. Like I'm not going to tell other people like go read my site. Like come read mine. Like fuck them. Like come and read our site. Like we've got the best things there. But it's it's very, I don't know. It's very hard to, and that's why we're big on op-eds, because we're thinking like to get people viewpoints or things that I can't necessarily report on. And I think there's reporters that don't fully understand what businesses are doing, to what degree they're doing, which I think that kind of thought leadership and contribution is really important. But it is really tricky for us to find the right attention points, because sometimes we'll publish something that we thought wouldn't have any resonance or whatever with our audience, and all of a sudden it's the one that goes on and gets 5,000 views within a week or whatever, and we're like, what
Mm,
the hell? Well, we didn't see that one coming at all, and it'll be on something
mm,
really niche about HR, or an area that you can't properly spot. And I mean, my comment earlier wasn't to hit any vendor, solution provider, service offering, whatever you might call it. It was just to think like maybe sometimes people need to put themselves like uh, books tell you, and any successful business leader will tell you, put your feet in the shoes of the person you're trying to sell. It's like you're dating. Like if I'm going on dates, or back when I used to, you try and show as much interest in that person. I think sometimes that's lost from what I understand. And instead of talking, I don't know. I'm going off on a bit of a spiel here that might not resonate with people, but to me, I think it's really doesn't need to be that complicated, I guess. But yeah, there's a lot of points, and how to capture people's attention. I'm not too sure on how to do it at the moment. I'm thinking we just write about what hits, and we try and use that to understand what people think. Man, it's a
no, but I really think there's a mission in creating that middle ground between the vendor that's the best in the world and the customer who's just trying to fix their problems, right? And
exactly,
finding a way to sort of talk about that. Maybe that's also where your best articles are actually resonating, because they answer a what or a why or a problem
exactly.
that's real in
That's
the
right.
real world, right?
Yeah.
The people have people have worlds right now. They it's a brownfield, as I said earlier. There
Brownfield,
are things
exactly.
out there. There's things out there.
Yeah.
When you have impact, if you want to have impact with AI, or with any technology, you also always have to remember what you're impacting. Big
Mm,
impact impacts something, and that impact is big. That's the point of the word impact, right?
mm,
People tend to not. understand that when they go on about just, oh well, just do this and it will fix everything, because it doesn't fix people, it doesn't fix processes, it doesn't fix your data, it doesn't fix your customers, your vendors, your public sectors, it doesn't fix your compliance issues, right?
Exactly.
All those things, that's the brownfield that people operate in every day, because we've built this civilization and these organizations
Yeah.
to create order between each other. So standing in their shoes and seeing how, what is your problem, and sometimes the problem is not to have a chatbot that can do whatever, right? I don't like the Microsoft, necessarily. I know that's how I don't say it's wrong, but it's
Mhm.
not the solution to the world to say here's Copilot. So
Exactly.
what should we
That's
use
such a
it
good
for?
point. Yeah.
Whatever you want to use it for, guys.
Yeah.
It's just a capability. Here it is for you all. Ta-da! It will change the world. Don't worry. It will change the world. 50 trillion%.
Yeah.
But and also those articles, right? 7% GDP increase by generative AI. I've seen stuff like that, right? I actually have a screenshot of it in my PowerPoint deck that I usually use.
Yeah.
7% GDP increase from what? From blah blah blah. It's just broad capability,
Yeah.
right? Where are
Exactly.
you going to use it? When can you say this was caused by generative AI and not something else, right? There's
Exactly.
something going on there that's a little bit weird, right? And I think that we need to figure out what are the issues people have. I said that, I think I said that in the early podcast. This is getting back to your point, the helping the middle ground. So I've been talking now, sorry,
No.
but is to say, um, damn it, now I lost it. But it's about
Mm.
figuring out obviously the issues people have. Oh yeah, so we have all the technology in the world right
Yeah.
now to do almost everything. That's why the problem is even more important than ever.
Exactly. Yeah. It it's such a good point. Like, that is literally what we try and do. What is the problem
Yeah.
someone's facing? And then we try and find the relevant information for that problem. Like, that's probably, I don't always get that right, but that's what we're trying to ultimately solve. And we're also just trying to make it a lot more fun. Like, there's so many things that are just boring. Like, people just want to suck the life out of something. And you think, when you're more human, people seem to trust you more and do more with you when they can see you're actually, and it's okay not to be like, I heard a great quote the other day, Lassie, and it really stuck with me. And I don't know if it's relevant to what we're saying right now, but it's just been in my head. And someone said, well, and someone told us and had a criticism of what we were doing, which I'm always welcome to, as long as they can tell me exactly what the criticism is. If someone comes along and just says you're rubbish, it's like, well, thanks. What's that going to do for my platform? Like, if you give me a reason, I'll probably ask you a few more questions. But someone said, if I was everyone's cup of tea, I'd be a mug. And I honestly think, like, it's a very similar thing to, platform can't be a cup of tea for everyone. Like, there's going to be industries, or like your example with Copilot, that is not going to serve. And I think it's really tricky where everyone wants their platform to take the world by storm. And like, there's very rare examples of companies that can be in every single industry or be across every kind of platform. And I think, it's similar to what Jeff Bezos. I don't know. And lastly, I could be going off the point here, but it's what Jeff Bezos said in his book, Writings by Jeff Bezos. I think it's like written by Walter Isaacson, and it basically says when he's investing in companies, he's looking for one of two things. He's trying to see if they're I don't know if he called them a pirate. He tried to see if they're called it. He called them a missionary and a, a missionary and someone like a mercenary. I think that was it. Two things. And he would say if
Hmm.
they're a mercenary, 99% of the time he wouldn't invest in them. If they were a missionary, 99% of the time he would invest in them, because he said the missionaries usually have a core purpose, a better reason, better customers, happier customers, and because of that, they usually tend to make more impact, more revenue, more market growth or whatever, compared to a mercenary where you will get ones that have bigger market share or whatever, but they're not properly trying to solve that middle ground problem or solve that problem. It's such a, I don't know if
No,
that
no,
matches the
that's right.
conversation, but it's
But
such
that's
I
also
read that.
Tom Key's, obliquity, the idea,
Mm.
that you shouldn't go for the goal directly. You should go for, big revenue. It's not a goal for a
Yeah,
company, but something else is a goal, and then revenue will come along the way, and all the other things will be created. Because your goals are achieved
yeah,
obliquely, he says, indirectly all the time. I think that's interesting, interesting perspective.
yeah,
Uh, that you don't just, I want to be the best in the world, and but you only become the best in the world by focusing on, I don't know, your dribbling skills or something, not by focusing on being the best in the world. It's football, right?
yeah,
Um, so you don't become happy by saying I want to be happy. That's the best one.
yeah. That's very true.
If you focus about on your happiness all the time, you're gonna be really unhappy.
Yeah, telling yourself all the time, "I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy."
Yeah. Why am I not happy? Why am I not happy now? I need to go in for
Exactly.
happiness. No, I need to get rid of that girlfriend. I need to be happy.
Yeah.
So things are a little bit more difficult to achieve that way. But hey, that's another topic. But the point is that every company is, we're special. We differ from all the rest of the market. We have special problems.
Mm.
uh but they all go out and say, oh, let's see if this generic technology can solve my special problem. There's this paradox in the market right now,
Yeah.
right? That we're trying to say that everyone's problem is the same. It requires the same solution, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's ridiculous. Like it's like a company that operates in healthcare, a company that operates in retail, a company that's an airline, and a company that sells home goods like an IKEA or sofas. They might all have, if you gave them all the same values, the same operating models, and the same things, they probably one of them would probably break and not work because
Mm,
they can't work off the same functional models. Just like say certain technology can't automate a process one way, that will work across different areas. Like it needs to be specialized and needs to be bespoke or pivoted or changed, or like the
mm.
core reason it's there might be the same, but yeah, like those products that they sell as an end to the end consumer or to the end business are going to be very, very different. And I think what works for one company isn't going to work for another. Sometimes the same principle or the very same foundational tech might work. And it's like when I was in jobs, right? I worked at Sagetti, which is a subsidiary of Capgemini. I worked at an engineering company. I worked at a company that developed like chatbot solutions and virtual telecommunications and all these different companies. And if I was looking to hire a marketing team or hire a marketing agency, I'd be looking for ones that specifically knew how to tackle our problem and tackle our industry compared to one that would be selling spoons and cutlery one day, selling homeware the next day, and selling things. And it's not saying you can't do all of it, but if you're going to go that route, you need to find people that you onboard into your company that are specialized for those target groups. And it's like it's got no problem. Like Salesforce do it, a lot of CRMs do it, Microsoft do it, but you'll find in those divisions you might do it, but you'll probably have people that are very specialized that know that market through and through, and they can serve them directly, and that's where you get called like an account director or
Yeah,
whatever
but it's
it
also,
might be.
yeah, that's right. That's also funny, right? The market's been like all about, not just general cloud, but industry cloud, and getting more specific, getting more
Mm,
tailored, more tailored. That was the talk, right? And then suddenly ChatGPT, nothing's tailored anymore. It's
yeah,
just the same foundational model for everyone, and we just know that's a lie to some extent, right? We know it's a lie
mm,
because
yeah,
we were already down the route of specialization and tailoring. Doesn't mean that doesn't mean that it's not extremely helpful. You just need to ask the why first and see about the what, and then see if there are other technologies that can fix this, or is ChatGPT just a part of it, or how can we make ChatGPT maybe bring to the fore some knowledge from our company that we didn't have before that will help us answer the why and stuff like that. But
mm,
expecting it to fix your relationship with your customers, who are the most important people in your company, for instance, I think that's the wrong way to go, right? As Nosobina said, I keep on referring to that quote. We don't need more content; we need more relevant content. So just
yeah.
having it create more crap is not the way to solve the world.
It's so
It's
true.
about making it help us know what content we are creating that could be better.
Yeah,
That's how you maybe make the world a little bit better, right? And
yeah,
that means you're not just putting it live on your customers,
yeah,
right?
and just throwing
Or
them
your
public.
employees.
Yeah, exactly, or employees or network or wider network or whoever it might be, and I honestly think there's like, you can have, like, the solutions, like, using the airplanes, for example. I'm sure ChatGPT and generative AI is very helpful in rapid response ticketing solutions and understanding what problems are happening and,
Mm,
creating automation feedback loops, and, like, the example with Klarna, I think, on one side, I think it's a
yeah.
brilliant thing. On the other side, I can understand why people are annoyed about it. But I think the key thing is people still seem to buy from people, and I think and I always buy off it. Like, even if I've got a good product, I'm not going to buy from you. Whereas occasionally, if I know that person, and I guarantee, like, it's happening in the UK government at the moment all the bloody time. Like, it's bizarre what's happening. They're buying from people that they clearly know outside of their governmental roles, in what it seems to be. And I think there's always going to be that game of who knows who and who you know. And a lot of the books I read, they say the foundations to a successful business is ring up your customer and go see them. Like, and that's what again, Mark Benioff said was like instrumental to Salesforce growth. That when I think they gave the example of JP Morgan and the Bank of Japan, and there was one in Australia. You say you would deploy like a 50-person team and just watch them. It was like instead of asking them, he would just say, "Can we just watch you for a week and just see how you use the platform? And we'll occasionally ask you questions, but we just want to mirror you and just watch what you're doing
Mm.
because that will show us more than what you're saying. Like what you do and what you say is very different." And people are saying that
Mm.
all the time. Like people say good things, but may not necessarily do good things, or vice versa. Say bad things and actually do good things. Or, and I think there's yeah, to your point, I went a little bit off tangent, but there's a one size fits all is a very risky game, and I'm guess that's what I'm kind of
Yeah, but
seeing at the moment.
there's also not a process, right? It does a process even exist? I sometimes ask, is an ideal type, right? And people do it
Mm.
differently, and also especially in sales, right, or in hiring processes. You want to hire an employee, it's all about feeling that you're complementary with the other person. That there's something going on there, and it might not be that you do everything by the book because
Yeah,
that's but sometimes you do things a little bit differently, oddly, and that's what gets them interested, or that's
mm.
what it's not that simple. That's what I'm trying to say. If you look down my LinkedIn, and you see all the comments generated by ChatGPT, that's not the ones you want to hook up with and
Yeah, they're
connect
rough.
with on LinkedIn.
Uh,
No, yeah, but it's
uh,
it's not interesting. It's just bland, right? This
yeah,
and I think that it has some similarities to COVID, right? We thought, oh, we're all just going to be working from home because we can do our jobs from there. Yes, we can,
yeah,
but we don't want to. So immediately we could go back to the office. Everyone went back to the office.
mm.
Why? Because humans like humans.
Yeah,
And how are
yeah.
you going to
Social,
automate
social
that?
creatures.
We like humans. So how are you
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
automate that? We still smell pheromones and crap like that. It's not it's not that simple. It's not just a machine. We don't want machines, right? I think we
yeah.
wanted to fix some things that we couldn't fix and give us more bulk and more volume, right? But at the end of the day, we only want to get more of things and be richer and have more food so we can enjoy it with others.
Yeah,
I actually think that.
yeah, for the most part, we're much more social creatures, and I think you get more shit done as well. That's it. Like you get more done when you're around people that really create,
Mm.
like, give you inspiration, or you can like it's a I don't know what the trend, even if it is a trend, but I feel like companies that are around people, they seem to be happier and better and more productive from what I see. I don't have any hard data for that, but I don't know. I don't like being. I like seeing people. I like chatting to people. I like seeing what's going on.
You get to quick conclusions quicker. That's my thing. I
Yeah,
think when I'm in a chat with someone, walking around talking to someone, I get to a conclusion quicker. But then also sometimes also happens. I've tried that a couple of times also with ChatGPT, right? Just discussing some things with it, but that's mainly just bouncing off ideas. I'm just always nervous that it's just trying to appease me because it does that. Saying, "Oh, you're so great. That's a really great idea. I love your idea. Your idea is the best one in the world."
yeah,
It keeps on going like that. Oh, that's a really interesting theory about quantum mechanics you have. It's not really what physicists would like, but usually do. But it's really interesting. It goes like, and I know it.
yeah,
You
like,
just tried to tell me I'm stupid. I've been discussing my own theories with it, right? But it's just saying it in such a nice way. It's just always speaking euphemistic to me, right?
yeah,
But Tom, also the AI Journal also do some polls and data and data gatherings, right, from the market. What
yep.
are some of the most interesting AI adoption data points you've come across lately? I'd love to discuss that with you as well.
Yeah, there's we're running them all the time. There's some good ones and there's ones that are really interesting because you see when people answer them like what they actually know and don't know and what's the right answer and what's not the right answer. But there's some really niche areas that we've looked at last year that it's kind of blowing my mind on. One recently is how AI is being used in retail, and that's something we're working on quite heavily at the moment. And it's very interesting to see what people's perception is and what they want to do. And I mean, we run fun polls as well, like what's people's favorite films based on technology and stuff like that. But it's there's some big trends, like the trend of how people think. AI in retail, particularly for payment systems, is going to be the biggest trend, and how it's going to change like self checkout servicing, and how it's going to change like ordering. And it's very like if you look at how Amazon were trying to position retail from going through barcodes and stuff, which we haven't seen here, and I haven't seen it in the UK. I heard there was one in London, but I haven't been to one. And kind of the uptake, and I think people I don't know. I think there's more people that actually aren't for it than you might expect at the moment. Like they're a bit more hesitant to think we don't want this rushing
Mm.
into our day to day life, and how it'll get involved with travel. I see travel as quite a big area we're doing, and all the more technical stuff as well, like from knowledge graphs and machine learning and all these different topics that we look at, which Darshani does a brilliant job at. And there's some interest, yeah, some really fascinating areas, and I think point that I'm always trying to look at for is like, what's the areas that we're missing? Like, where is the most bizarre thing? Like, we were seeing like how AI is used in like adult content, or how it was used in films, or how it was used in music, or how it was used in um what do you call it, like chemistry, and how it was used in creates of material goods. It's bizarre. Like it's bizarre on the uptake. On
Mm.
what kind of ways what kind of ways AI is being used, and what people's perception of it is. Yeah.
Mm. So you see people being having a. So you said you're both experiencing that people are being a little bit more hesitant, but also being overhyping it. Is it a double thing or?
Yeah, it is. It's like depends who you ask. It's like who you ask and what you do, and what people are saying, and like what people want to look at as well. Like we're looking at a lot of like what courses people want to take, and it's very interesting around people saying that you need to learn more data science. And like some of the polls we ran, like one that we recently ran is about like what kind of specialization they'd want to go into within AI at university to learn about, to take to a product afterwards, because I think that's a really missed spot on what's being used, and like what kind of learning path would you want to do, and what ways do people want to consume content based on AI. There's always cool things that people that we really want to look at, like really niche areas, and like what ways do you engage with it. And I think how it's being used in the film industry is one that I'm like amazed at, and the recent
Mm.
June 2 that's come out, it's quite cool because you're seeing that. And it, it'll come full circle what I'm saying, but like how the director was basically saying how they're trying to not use special effects as much, and the reason it's so good is because they use massive sets and massive onstage sets to try and make it as
Mm.
realistic as possible. And I guess that comes back to my point of how people are seeing trends with what they use AI in, and what they're doing, and how sometimes it doesn't need to be as focused on tech as it is. Like it sometimes just needs to be taken back to the basics. And I think people are missing out on just I don't know. Does that make sense, Lassie? I kind of feel like I've gone on two different
No, but it
sides.
makes sense. It makes sense. It makes. I've been saying also, people will be buying vinyl in an age of streaming. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah, that's
So
it.
you have Dune coming out, the second part here, and they they're not using special effects, not using CGI, and it's like uh, computer graded special effects, right? And you're
Yeah,
like, how on earth is that even possible in an age of generative AI, right?
yeah,
It's almost as baffling as how bad Siri is in an age of generative AI. But that's another discussion. But
yeah.
but there's something I don't think that's intentional. But
Yeah. But don't you think, like, I
I
feel
don't-
like Lassie, your point there, I feel like, and that's what we want to run in our polls actually, like, see what the difference is. But I almost feel like there's going to be competitions to do things without generative AI. It would be like more
hmm.
points go to people that actually do projects or do
Oh,
things
so
without
so
the use
that's
of
what Apple is trying to do with Siri. Oh, now I understand them. Now I understand them. They're trying to make a stupid chatbot. Great. Oh, an analog one almost, right? Okay.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Exactly.
But I think so. I think that the human touch is going to be really interesting in the future, and I also think that that's something you need to remember in your processes. I also said that
Mm,
in an earlier podcast episode, that you need to remember that if there's a human on the demand side of what you do, you need to maybe consider from the outset at least that you should have some kind of human on the supply side as well.
yeah.
Until proven otherwise, you shouldn't. you shouldn't say, oh, there's some humans demanding something there, let's just automate it, without
Yeah.
asking, could there be a downfall? Why are they
Right.
asking me these things? Are they asking me these things because they want to work with me, or they want to give me money, or they want to give me, I don't know, attention, whatever, it's something good, or
Yeah.
am I providing something that's valuable to them in a ways that others can't, or whatever? And if I
Yeah.
automate that, maybe the world becomes poorer, right? You need to consider that in every automation you do. Not
Mm.
every automation is about efficiency. Sometimes it's about other things as well. I think that's just an important thing to remember. I think
Yeah. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
general.
Well, like one of
So I
the
think that
yeah, exactly, and it's an important thing to remember, Lassie. Like people saying, what was it when we asked what aspect of AI specialization would be a deal breaker for you? So it's like a really interesting thing. Of what would something that make AI not valuable for you as well? And like, what are people's preferences on it? And is it poor UI and UX, like why people don't use certain social media
mm,
platforms, or is it limited interaction with people and not being able to see how other people are using it? There's always things that I think people miss when they're just looking at the plain state of, or would it be like lack of understanding for? And I think that's a big problem when well, I don't know if it is a problem. I think it's something I'm curious about. It's probably the best way to word it, of how people show that are actively selling these solutions, what other whatever deployments they've done or whatever projects they've had success with, and what industries. And a lot of them are always tailored towards bigger enterprises. Like there's not many places that kind of specialize towards small businesses or SMEs. They all seem to be they want to go after the big dogs and after the big ones that but yeah, so it's when small businesses make up the bulk of most economies, I think, if I've got that right,
mm,
they make up the most of jobs and employees and GDP and all that kind of jazz. So it's really
that's also
interesting.
because it's difficult. That's also because the thing is difficult. If you sell to enterprise, you sell capabilities, you can sell partnerships, you can sell
Mm.
ideas. But to SMBs, you sell products, and that's a completely different thing.
Yeah,
That's
completely
how I
different
usually
ballgame.
say it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it is. It is actually. You need to see that it's working and it's saying, doing the right things right now, right here, right. And that's not how.
Yeah.
That's not the mode of generative AI right now. It doesn't do that because
Yeah.
there's no one to imitate. It's about creation. It's about seeing what can we do that's not never been done before. That's an
Mm.
investment you need to make, and typically that's only for enterprises, right? To
Mm.
make that investment right now. But
Yeah.
I'm hoping we'll see more in the S&P market because I think actually the investments they need to do something differently is not that high necessarily. This has been very much about all the overhype on the market, but there's a lot of things that you can really do with this. There's so many much unstructured data out there that you can actually um, highlight a little bit and get some structured stuff out of because it's something you don't have today, but you can actually get something that's a bit more tangible than what you had before. Because
Yeah.
people need to, and that's actually quite simple to do.
Mm.
It doesn't take a lot of effort to build something like that, and
Mm.
that's why I think, as I said before, building into an automation framework, for instance, I think that's going to be a game changer in 2024.
Yeah.
And people realize that instead of having to build this all-encompassing one ring to rule them all to chatbot that will talk to
Yeah.
you about all your company's data. As soon as people realize that's not the way to go, I think we'll get to a value point. That's my hope, at least, and that's what I'm preaching when I'm
Yeah.
out talking.
No, I think so. I really like that.
Someone said to me, listen, someone said to me, I did a presentation last week, and he actually said to me that he's never had anyone before mention as many of the faults or the problems in generative AI as I did. And I just
Yeah.
mentioned, it hallucinates, it doesn't have a big, great context awareness,
Mm.
and it can be jailbreaked, and sometimes natural language is not natural language. Sometimes it's chaotic code, right?
Yeah.
And he was like, no one's ever, in all the presentations he's seen a lot, has
Yeah.
ever said that before. He said that
Yeah.
to me.
Well, that
It's
just
like,
actually outlined the bad pitfalls of it.
yeah, it does, right? But people are talking about all the value without mentioning these pitfalls. But I think the
Mm.
pitfalls underscore the value, right? Because then you'll get some real value. If you're aware of these four things or more, you'll
Mm.
get to some real value. But if you're not aware of it, chances are you're gonna take a wrong turn, right?
Yeah,
If you don't,
exactly.
if you don't know, I
Yeah.
know all the bad roads, right? If I don't tell you,
Yeah,
it's, I
exactly. If you
I,
don't know 'em.
I was just baffled. Is this what the market is doing right now? Is this what the other consultancy firms are telling people?
Yeah.
Not telling them the problems. I think, really,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Are you
I'm
not
not
being
pointing
tran
fingers. I just feel that we actually need to talk about the challenges here as well, right? It's just not just this will, oh, but I don't talk about hallucinations because it will be solved tomorrow. But you don't know, right? You
Mm.
just don't know, and I don't think it will. It's
Yeah,
not.
well, hallucinations on their own are really interesting because of
Yeah.
things you don't like, you call hallucinations, and things you do like, you call creativity, which I always thought was a funny line when I heard that. I was
No,
like,
I
oh,
call it all. For me, it's all hallucinations, but
yeah,
it's just sometimes some of it is beautiful, and some other things are annoying. Right, that's the point. But it's a lying machine, as Kurt Cagle said, and it's a
exactly.
good lying machine. Sometimes it makes something really awesome.
Yeah,
I
sometimes,
love it when I give it a pre-prompt of being super ominous. That's
yeah.
the best one
I
because
feel like that's
it gets them.
what copywriters are gonna become. They're gonna become like prompters, like people that can prompt
Yeah.
really well. Like I think Kate Stratini, I hope I say Kate Strachini. I saw something that she was like brilliant at creating prompts for her dedicated channel, which is really interesting. But then you get other ones that aren't so good. Like I saw in Future magazine. Did you see this last year about the GBT that they broke and they basically asked it uh, if it's a all-encompassing god or whatever, and it was giving some bizarre answers like I control an army of drones, and this is coming from ChatGPT, and they said by the time they
Mm.
reported on it, they'd patched it up, and like, if you haven't read it, like it's on Future, and I think
No, but
somewhere else.
someone also said that on
I can't remember.
Copilot that he had it almost talk to him and saying
Maybe
like,
it's Copilot.
"I have all of your company's data. I'm inside of it, and
Yeah,
you are a slave to me." It's like, what is
yeah,
this, right?
I can see everything. I can
Yeah,
command
exactly.
drones. Anyone that does not obey me will decree the act of whatever. It was bizarre. Like I saw it all
But
over
but on
Instagram.
the copy thing, right? I think I'm a good prompter, and I'm also teaching prompt engineering, right? So I did a
Mm,
good prompt, a long prompt about writing an article, and it wrote it, and I was like, "Oh, this sounds reasonable." Automation bias all the way. I was like, "This sounds really reasonable. It's nice, has some points." So I
mm,
sent it off, for to the ones that were supposed to read it, the peer review, internal peer review, and she was like, "This is crap. This is not at all what we outlined you were going to write about. This is pure crap." So
really?
I sat down, I discarded everything, and I wrote it all by myself in hand,
Uh,
just because I'm good at writing as well, right? And
yeah,
then she said, "It's a billion times better. I'm happy to put my name on this with you, and there's a couple of notes, and then let's push it out there."
yeah,
You know, that this is a true story.
yeah.
So
Ah,
I was completely automation biased there. I didn't. I thought it was a good article, but it was a
yeah,
crappy article. I can see it afterwards.
yeah,
But the point is that it's gonna, so if she's a good copywriter, maybe she shouldn't use ChatGPT. But the problem is a lot of people are not good copywriters. A lot of people are dyslexic, or slightly
yeah.
dyslexic. A lot of people are undereducated. ChatGPT is going to be change the world for these people, and I think
Yeah.
that's what we need to look at, right? Not necessarily how can we replace an obvious genius like me, but
Mm. Yeah, well, me and you.
but me and you, obviously you and me, Tom. But how can we help all of the poor souls out there, right? Who is not us, right?
Exactly, exactly. Oh, it's
And that brings me. That's another question there, actually. What education in AI? Education in the future, right? I just wrote it the other day that we shouldn't. I don't think that it will remove programmers and coders. I think we still need to have people who can code. The problem is just how are we going to get the interns and the junior consultants in coding, because now
mm,
everyone can get that done with ChatGPT. But if you don't have those, you're never going to get the senior guy who can orchestrate it, right?
yeah.
What do you think about this? Are we going to cut off the bottom of the pyramid in every job about writing and coding?
God knows. It's a really interesting question, like the amount of new job titles that are popping up and the chief AI officer in particular and all these different roles, prompt engineer and everything, and I really don't know how it's gonna. I'm really interested by that question because you think, how is it going to change? If I had it at school, I'd be much smarter. I know that without a doubt. Like I'd be able to,
Mm.
and I probably wouldn't be much smarter because the bar of smartness would just rise with it. So you'd still be probably just as smart as you think you are. I don't know. And
But
it's
we just agreed that you couldn't get any smarter, Tom. We just agreed that just a
exactly
second
like
ago.
Einstein. It's or Turing or whatever you want to call me. But no, it's I think there's going to be a lot of new jobs that we just haven't seen last year. Like it's going to be quite interesting, and I think the roles of interns and people. I mean, all that age group already. From what I hear, like we haven't got any, but from what I hear, my friends that are in big companies and multinational creatives or whatever they might insurance, and they hire interns and they put people on placements. They seem to be much more. value driven, I guess, is the right word. Where they, I remember when I first started my jobs, you'd be the first person in, you'd work your ass off, and you'd really
Mm,
push yourself. I don't know if that was a trend of being in London, and I'm sure it's similar across the world in major cities,
yeah.
and maybe with yourself. But now I'm hearing that they rock up at like 10 a.m. and they're very like, oh well, if I get it done, I'll get it done. It's just like, fuck is that?
Main
Like,
character disease, isn't it?
yeah,
That's
and
what people are calling it.
you saw that hedge fund manager. I don't know his name, but if you type in, it was a, and he said he's pulling his funding. I saw it on Bloomberg, and he's pulling funding from from Harvard because or MIT because he said it's producing too many snowflakes, and he was like, the world needs tougher people, and it's very
Mm.
interesting about how. What lies ahead for these people that are coming out of university or don't want to do it? And like people say, it's very easy to become successful because there's so many people that they've got the use of these tools. I guess it plays a part in it that they don't really want much, I guess, or that they can work remotely. And I don't know, but I think there'll be some very interesting roles, especially when
Now
companies.
the listeners can't see what I can see because I have you on video here, but
Mm.
you don't look like someone who's 70 years old, but you just sounded like a boomer, Tom.
Maybe 31 is old.
Oh, they need to be tougher, the kids today, kids
I think
today,
they
they're
do.
so snowflakey.
Well, I think there's a trend, man. But the people over in Asia seem to be fucking working hard and coming up with innovations left, right, and center. But I don't know. That's personal opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. But I feel I don't know what like what jobs are going to be existing because creatives are going to be harder to become a creative director because there's going to be such more high quality of work. If you look at people that are going to be service representatives, you're already seeing what Klarna is doing, and that's going to be across airports or service hubs or logistics. Drivers, God knows. I'm not saying they'll be out of work, and that's a big thing that I never stand by. I never stand by that argument. A lot of people thought in the Industrial Revolution they'd be out of work, and now more people are employed than bloody ever before. Or
Yeah,
maybe not
exactly.
right this moment, but it's always constantly improving, like decade after
It is.
decade. And I think it's a trend. And like you look at the trend of the world generally 100 years ago is in a much better shape. Like there's less. I think it's like since 1975, the amount of nuclear weapons has massively decreased
It's,
from
it's
like
it's really simple, right? If there's no
70.
one to buy what the automation,
Yeah.
if no one to buy what the robots produce, then there's no robots.
Exactly, exactly. The people still need to buy things. Like it's bizarre. But I generally don't know what kind of new role I was talking about it last year, about a year ago, and I was like, what kind of new roles will be out there? Like cheat like I don't know. There's some really
But,
interesting
but I was
roles.
just I was just really the Nvidia CEO saying you shouldn't learn how to code, right?
Mm.
While he keeps on hiring coders, right? By the way, but you should teach your children right now to code because in 10 years they won't have to.
Yeah, well,
But I think that as has been all this is continuously been happening this way that the more improved tools we have, the more
mm,
complex solutions we want to build. And that
yeah,
orchestration still requires a skill. And saying a programmer is about knowing a specific coding language is so
yeah, like R,
wrong
yeah,
because it's about orchestrating code. Coding is always about orchestrating code more than knowing the language.
mm,
So it seems like I don't know. I don't know where that came from. That statement. It just sounded like something that a clickbaity thing. Make attention grabber because
yeah,
you still need people who can orchestrate it. And if you don't have anyone who's learned, how code works with other code
mm,
stuff, right? Then how are you going to get to those senior people who can actually orchestrate it? That was my point before. If you
mm,
cut off the bottom of the pyramid, how are you going to get the seniors who you
yeah,
actually need? And you will keep on needing them even when you have tons of AI generated, maybe good code. I'm not saying it's not going to be good at coding, you
yeah,
know, blobs and blocks, but we want something even more complex orchestrated then. And who's going to orchestrate it? If no
yeah.
one's been, able to learn how to do the small things and understand what it means to build an object, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a really important thing, and I mean, I think we were talking about it before. Like, I think new economies are going to be created, Lassie. Like, I honestly do, and I think the space is going to be a big one that opens up all sorts of doors and things and materials and business and ecosystems and well, just like the iPhone opened up the app world, like the app stores, and like
Mm,
how big the app stores become, and the internet opened up e-commerce sites and all these different things. And I think Vision's going to open up a whole new door, and how watches opened up a lot more to do with healthcare and tracking and all these things. I think I don't know what it is, but I keep looking at space, and I don't know if it's, but like all the advancements you're seeing, and China building the 52 football fields worth of a space station, and they're going to somehow get that up on the moon, and they want to create get that up into space and create different things. And it is such a good point that you're making about who will fill those intern roles or new roles, because I think people are, and it's not necessarily a bad thing to become more lazy. Like sometimes lazy means you find answers quicker because you want to find something quicker.
Yeah, but the point is just, are we automating the interns here? Are we
Yeah.
automating the seniors? And right now it looks like we're automating the interns. And I don't think that's the smart thing to do necessarily.
Yeah, have you seen that post where it's like, oh, and they're talking about AI, and it's like, you might have seen it last day. It's like, uh, automate these jobs, and then it went, okay, you're out of a job, to the CEO. I'm paraphrasing, but it was basically saying you're asking for everything so automated, we don't actually need you as a CEO anymore.
Yeah, but that's the
because we
thing,
want
right?
a
I saw this also in the statistics, right? Someone projecting the future. No,
Yeah.
senior managers and CEOs will not be replaced, but everyone else is in danger. Like, but how are you gonna get senior managers and CEOs?
Yeah,
You don't have
what's that route to
that.
it? Yeah.
People don't they're not born CEOs, right? It's not like, hey.
It's a
So
bizarre.
you're 50. What do you want to be? Oh, I'm going to skip school now because I'm going to be the CEO of Apple. That's not how it works. That's not how you become Tim Cook, right? It's not, I don't want to take an education. I'm just going to go directly to my job, right? Oh, CEO.
Yeah, they'll be lucky to have me.
Just like you said, right? We don't need snowflakes. We need maybe some tougher people.
Yeah.
Oh, this is such a boomer talk. Anyway, Tom, this has been a great chat, and we've been covering a lot of ground and talking around the market. And I really think that this is, if you're new to the market, this has been a really interesting a discussion, actually. Or
Yeah.
you're a little bit nervous about, am I the only one who has these precautions or these weird hunches about something? I think our conversation will maybe make people feel a little bit more um, relieved that they're not alone in thinking these
Yeah,
things, but also,
I hope so.
the hope that we'll get to something that is value, because we don't seem to have seen it yet. You said that yourself.
Yeah,
You want to see more value out there, right? And you talk to tons of companies and consultancies as the head of the AI Journal.
yeah.
So this is not something people are alone with. But I want to, in the end here, this is what we always do, Tom. I'm going to ask you the final question.
Mm.
So are you ready for that?
Yeah, I think so. That's a good question you asked.
So, Tom, what is the only constant?
With me, I think the only constant, there's a few things that I looked at, but the only constant is that there'll always be innovation in one way or another. And to accompany that, there'll always be change. Change is something that I always see as being a constant, and what form that takes, whether it takes, and innovation is sometimes shown in ways you can't understand it or ways you can't see it. And I honestly think that as much as people don't want change, they're the ones that are going to lose out most. And change isn't always positive; it's sometimes very negative, and it's sometimes things that we don't want. And I don't know if anyone else that's come on your show said something similar, but similar to how time is another only constant. Everything will move on whether you want to stop it or not, and that's what a lot of people see, especially successful people, say that it's the one resource they're very careful over. I honestly encourage people to think that there's a lot more better things to come, and I think because of change, we're gonna continually live in on a macro scale, on a much better world, and we're going to see much more exciting advances and naturally just become smarter people. So it's a big change for me.
That's a good answer, Tom. Innovation and change.
Yeah.
And it echoes a lot with some of the other guests as well. And change is the original only constant.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I wanted to try and think of something else, but I was like, those to me is like, it's the worst thing I have is people that don't want to change, because I think change is coming one way or another, like whether you like it or not. And I think it's very important for people to understand, but not to be nervous of it, and not to look at it as think change is always good or change is always bad. And sometimes to just look at it, let's say, as scientists look at things, it just is. So
yeah, it's a great answer. Thank you for your time, Tom, and thank you for being on The Only Constant.
No, I appreciate it, Lassie. It's a lot of fun, and I'm excited to see who else you have on the show, and thank you for having me.
You've listened to The Only Constant, a podcast sponsored by Basico.